Butternut squash is a big favorite, especially with gardeners. But honeynut squash has been all the rage in recent years, both in the garden and the kitchen. So today, we're going to look at the differences between these two, how they stack up, and then finally taste them to see if honeynut lives up to its reputation. Butternut squash was actually invented back in the 1940s, so it's been around for about 80 years. It's a staple in many stores and is very easy to find year-round. It quickly became a favorite because its seed cavity stayed near the bottom, meaning you got more bang for your buck with this entire neck full of edible squash. It also keeps very well, being good for anywhere from 3 to 12 months depending on the exact type and conditions. And last but not least, it certainly has a really wonderful flavor that people enjoy. Used in everything from pies to soup, to that wonderful Trader Joe's mac and cheese, or even just on its own. The honeynut squash, on the other hand, is relatively new. It was developed by a Cornell professor combining both a butternut squash and a buttercup squash, making this a hybrid. But the original butternut squash was also a hybrid too. You can see that physically they have roughly the same shape. The honeynut is just about half the size of the butternut height-wise. It also has this much deeper orangish color versus the tan of the butternut. Another key difference is that the skin of the honeynut is much softer, so it doesn't store quite as well as the butternut. You can even see the one that I got here has a couple puncture marks from the store, which I had to throw this in the fridge to make sure it didn't completely spoil. Now, it is harder to find honeynut squash because they are so new. I just got lucky and found these at one of my local Trader Joe's. And something like that or a farmer's market will probably be your best bet. But now, let's get to cooking these guys and see how they stack up. This is a really simple roasting recipe. I start just by peeling the squash here. You don't actually have to peel honeynut squash, the skin is tender enough where you can eat it straight, but I just wanted to be consistent with the regular recipe. I just wanted to highlight the inside of the squash here. You can see the seed cavity at the bottom, but that fibrous cavity extends up into the top of the squash as well. So next I just scoop all that out so we only have solid squash left. Another reason I was so excited to find these honeynut squash in the store is to try to save all of this goodness. I put some of these seeds aside and I'm going to try to grow them next year. Now the catch is, since honeynut squash is a hybrid, they might not breed true to type. I've heard a few different conflicting things about this on the internet, but I figured it's worth a shot. Because they're so popular, it's just difficult to find the seeds available online. A lot of retailers will be sold out most of the year. Best case scenario, I'll be able to confirm that these grow good honeynut squash. I figure worst case scenario, I wind up with a squash that's completely random, and that's kind of fun. So hopefully to be safe, I'll still be able to get some online and then grow them side by side with these. This is what's left after it's all ready and prepared, and now all you have to do is slice it up and cube it up. You want to cut it into roughly 1/2 inch to 1 inch size pieces, and this is what it'll look like when it's all done. Next, we're just going to add 2 teaspoons of olive oil and an 1/8 teaspoon of each garlic salt, pepper, and paprika. Then just toss it all together so it's nice and evenly coated with all the oil and spices. And it should look something like this once it's ready. Next, we'll do the exact same process with the butternut. I used one of my smaller butternuts just because I was also doing the honeynuts here. It's hard to tell with the sped up video, but the skin was actually much tougher to peel off here, and that's because of its thickness. Again, just wanted to show you guys the inside of this and how it differs from the honeynut. It's completely solid on the top half and just ready to go. When I measured the honeynut squash, it came out to about 235 grams of material, so I wanted to make sure I had the exact same amount with the butternut squash. And that only ended up being 1/4 of the squash in terms of volume. Once I mixed that with the oil and spices, it was ready to lay these out on a tray and put them all in. On here you can see that I have made this dividing line out of triangular squash pieces. The butternut is on the left and the honeynut is on the right. You'll want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees, and once you pop them in, set the timer for 25 minutes. I usually go 30 to 35 minutes with this, but because the pieces were slightly smaller, I wanted to stay on the safe side. You can always add time. And then the squash is done once it's starting to brown on the edges, and it's easy to pierce with a fork. Alright, now that these guys are out of the oven, time for the taste test. I'll start with the butternut squash first, since I know how this is supposed to taste. I love this recipe because it's just melt in your mouth tender. The savory squash is really good. But yeah, I could eat this all day. Alright, and now for the honeynut squash. I'll try to find a similar sized piece here so they're cooked about the same. Oh wow, I can tell it's already more tender than the butternut squash. Oh my. Guys, I wish you could taste this side by side because I wasn't expecting that big of a difference, but this is so much sweeter. Way more tender too. This, as good as the butternut is for like melt in your mouthfeel, this is just like, it's phenomenal. Sweetness really mixes well with the spices. Yeah, so let me go back to the butternut just to see that comparison again. It's night and day. Holy crap. I was not expecting that big of a difference. I think that's pretty conclusive. I highly recommend getting some Honeynut squash if you can, because if you just do a simple recipe like this, you'll enjoy it. You'll see the difference. I hope this video was helpful for you guys who might have been curious about Honeynut squash and haven't been able to get it. And if this is your first time learning about Honeynut squash, I hope you get a chance to grow it as well. I hope I do next year. And with that, I'm going to finish this for dinner, so I'll see you guys next time.